Hi, so it's Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and this is kind of a special kind of video because I'm using this to document a problem I'm having with my Janome 15,000 embroidery sewing machine. The 15,000, to give you some background to it, is a very elaborate machine. It's my principal machine. It's a very expensive machine. It retails in Canada for about $14,000. I did not spend $14,000 on it. I got it for a special price, but nevertheless, it was still a very expensive machine. I was in love with this machine since the day that I saw it, and this got me into machine embroidery. And it was working fine for a while. Now, I've had the machine for just under about 2 years. I also want to say on the outset that I am a power user. I use this machine all the time, 7 days a week, anywhere from a couple of hours to possibly 8 hours in a day. So I look after them as well. I keep it well cleaned, well oiled all the time, but I have had problems with it. And my latest problem has been that when I tried to embroider, it basically chewed up, it jammed, it broke needles, and the timing went off, and I had to take it in and have it serviced. So it was in the shop for about just under 2 weeks, and it came out. It's all been repaired now, and it cost me about $200 to have that done, which is fine. These machines are an investment, so you do have to spend money to keep them well maintained. I don't have a problem with that. So I went to embroider with it when I got it home. I couldn't. It was breaking threads, it was breaking needles, it was jamming up, all kinds of things. I tried all kinds of stuff, and to make a long story short, I sat down and I wrote an email to my service provider, which is my local quilt store, who's an official Janome dealer. And I want to say on the outset that this problem has nothing to do with the person that owns that store, okay? It's not their fault. I want to make that perfectly clear. But they're the person I need to go to see if we can resolve this issue. So I sent this email to this person yesterday, and I'm waiting for a reply. So here's what I wrote. Did a little salutation at the beginning of it, which has the name of the person in it, and I don't want to reveal the name of that person to keep their privacy, so I'll just get right into the main meat of this email. So I get home yesterday and try a simple stitch. It works fine. So this morning, Sunday, I decide to do an embroidery project. I set up the machine for this, put in the yellow dot bobbin case, put in an embroidery needle, Floriani Chrome 90/14 embroidery needle, insert and thread a new Wonderfill Class 15 pre-wound bobbin, set up the embroidery arm, insert my hoop, thread the machine with Floriani embroidery thread, pull up my pattern, and then all hell breaks loose. The machine decides to repeatedly not pull up the bobbin thread, and the thread itself breaks. I rethread the machine again from scratch, including reseating and rethreading the bobbin. I double check to make sure everything is where it should be in terms of thread path and embroidery arm. I start again, and the thread breaks. I get out the manual, and I follow its instructions as I rethread the machine from scratch. I double check my threading both at the thread path level and the bobbin thread path. All is well. I start the embroidery, and again, the thread breaks. I then decide to replace the bobbin. I repeat all the threading from scratch with the new bobbin. Again, the thread breaks. I replace the needle with a brand new one. The one that was in it already was also brand new, but I decided to try another one. The thread breaks and does not pull up the bobbin thread. I have also double checked all the threading paths. So I think maybe I need more stabilizer for this project. It is about 24,000 stitches. So I double the stabilizer, which is a tearaway stabilizer, rethread, etc. This time the needle jams and the bobbin case is pulled out of its proper placement. I reseat the bobbin case. Again, I double check the manual to make sure I've done this right, and I have. I rethread everything and start again, and this time the bobbin case is pulled out of place and the needle jams and breaks. I pull out the bobbin case and inspect it, and it has been scarred by the needle. I have a brand new one. I insert it, rethread everything, and start again. The needle jams, and the new yellow dot bobbin is scarred. That means I have now damaged 2 brand new yellow dot bobbins. Not happy. Before the bobbins were damaged, I tried a different embroidery project, just on the off chance there was something not right about the one I was using. I pulled up one I had used before and had never had a problem with. That was when I started to have problems with the bobbin cases. At this point, if there had been a window handy, I would have picked up the machine. Well, you know what I was thinking. I calmed down. I decided that maybe I should try regular sewing to see what happens, since on Saturday I had only spent about a minute with the machine. Turned it on, sewed a straight stitch line, that was it, and it was fine for that. I changed the bobbin case to a red dot bobbin, put in a brand new quilting needle, Floriani 90/14, and rethreaded the machine with Aurifil 50/2 thread, the thread I use all the time for piecing. I rethreaded the bobbin as well as using the Wonderfil Class 15 pre-wound bobbin. The machine worked fine. I even tried several decorative stitches, and they worked fine as well. My conclusion? Whatever's wrong with the machine has to do with the embroidery part of it. Regular sewing works fine. So what is the plan here? I will be honest, I'm not loving my machine right now. Yes, I'm a power user, but I look after my machines. I clean and oil them regularly after every project before I start a new one. Sometimes, if it is a really long project and there's a lot of lint, I clean and oil halfway through the project. I change out my needles regularly. If I've been sewing for a long time, a new needle goes in. Also, I start a new project with a new needle. I always double check my threading and settings before I start sewing. I take all these precautions because this machine, as you know, was a major financial investment. What should I do? To be honest, at this point, I just want to scrap this machine and buy a 550E. Walter loves his and has had zero problems with it. That's my husband. The problem is, I have already spent a lot of money on machines, as you know, but I still want to embroider since I love it very much. I have 5 Janome machines. I know, overkill. Something for another video. I'm open to suggestions. Thanks for hearing me out. So that's the note that I sent off to my Janome representative, my service person, my quilt shop owner. And I'm waiting to get a reply. Now, this is a long weekend here in Canada, and she's very busy trying to, with the whole COVID thing and to deal with that. So, I'm giving her a few days to hear from her, and then if I don't hear anything, say by about the middle of the week, I will resend the email, and we'll see where it goes from there. But in the meantime, I did some research. I went online and I found the Janome forum, which is right on the Janome website. And since 2015, other people have had similar problems with their machines. Now, these were not all 15,000 machines. They were a variety of different machines. Some were embroidery. Most were just the regular, like non-embroidery machines. Same problems that I'm having with the bobbin being pulled out and it not doing what it's supposed to do. And they'd had it serviced. One lady was very incensed by the whole thing because her service representative turned around and blamed it all on her. And she'd been sewing for 30 years on a variety of different machines and never had this problem. Janome themselves have not, from what I can find on the forum site, have never addressed the issue at all. It's only been people with the problems talking to other people with the same problems. So that's kind of frustrating as well. So I'm documenting this. In a few minutes, I'm going to go to the machine. I'm going to set it up for embroidery, as I always do, and I'm going to see what happens. And I'm going to film that as it happens. Now, what I think will probably happen is what happened repeatedly yesterday, and that was jamming, all that other stuff. Then I have a couple of other things I might try as well. So I'm putting this all on here as a document to show people that I'm just not bitching for the sake of bitching. I want my machine to work. So I'll come back and we'll start that process. So I'm just going to show you the parts that I am using for setting this up for an embroidery machine. Now, the Janome has several different bobbins you can get. The one that comes with the machine is what they call the red dot bobbin. And the reason it's called the red dot bobbin is because it has a red dot. It's kind of hard to show it, but it's right here. And that's what you line it up with when you drop it into the case, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. But when you do embroidery, you're supposed to switch this one out and use the yellow dot bobbin, which is right here. And apparently this has a different tension on it for embroidery. I think it's a higher tension, I think. how that works. So that's what you put into the machine when you switch it over to embroidery mode. Now you also have to switch over your stitch plates. Now this is the zigzag plate, and that's the one that I usually have in the machine when I'm doing my regular piecing. But for embroidery, you put in the straight stitch plate, and that's what it looks like. So that goes in as well. Also, you switch out your needle. I usually use a quilting needle but for piecing, but when you're doing embroidery, you use an embroidery needle. And I use the Floriani Chrome embroidery needle, 90/14 size. And that's what I have always used. In fact, this needle was recommended to me by my quilt store as well. So that's what I will put in the machine. Now, in the meantime, you know how I mentioned in that email that there was scarring. Okay, so I'll show you on my yellow dot bobbin what I mean by that. If you look very carefully, probably hard to show you on here, but there are some scrape marks right in here, and I think there's another one, yeah, up in here. Now, those scrape marks were caused when the needle came down and the bobbin case was pulled up by the thread not, you know, winding around where it was supposed to, and the needle hit it and it scored it. Now, this can, from what I understand, give you some problems, because if there's any little burrs on here, the thread can catch on it and that will present a problem. Now, I actually buy these things like you buy a can of Coke, okay? They're not cheap. They're $40, $45 a piece. And I usually have some spare ones in my stash. Well, as I said, I had 2 of these, and they're both scarred now because of what happened yesterday. But my Janome dealer said that if I take a file and you just file off those burrs, which is what I'm doing here right now, and I have seen her do this with my machine a long time ago when I first had a problem similar to this, and it worked. She also recommended I get one of these files, which is a glass file, because I guess they're a little finer grit. So I have 2 of these, and I do that. So I just go around and see where the marks are, and I just take this and lightly file it to make it smooth. So that's what I'm doing right here, right now. And I'm just checking. There's another spot right there. Now, I myself have done this to some bobbins before that I've had a little problem with, and usually it works as well. Depends on how bad the mark is. Still, I don't think this is a proper solution to the problem. But what are you going to do? You know, like, I carry spares usually. But I mean, it's kind of pricey, up $45 Canadian a bobbin, you know, really? Plus tax. So this is not a long-term solution, okay? This is kind of the solution for, you know, get you through until you can get to your shop and get a new bobbin case. Okay. I think that's the best I can do. Okay, so I'm going to install the bobbin, yellow dot bobbin, an embroidery needle, pull out my arm for the embroidery unit, get it set up for embroidery mode, get some Floriani thread, thread that into the machine, and set up a pattern and my hoops and everything, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so now I'm going to set up the machine for embroidering. You probably can't see it on camera, but I've opened up my embroidery arm at the back of the unit. the way it's supposed to be. And now I'm going to drop my yellow dot bobbin into the case. Now you line up the yellow dot with the little red arrow that's right on here, and you just put it underneath the hook, and you put it in. It should snap in a little bit. And I'm just checking to make sure it's seated properly, it's not moving. Yep, everything is fine. So then I'm going to put on my straight stitch plate. And on this model, it just slips in and snaps down. And I'm going to unthread the machine because I didn't do that at first, so I need my little snips here. And I'm just going to unsnip this thread that's in there, pull it out from the bottom. And I'm going to, oops, sorry, that was my microphone I was touching. I'm going to now install my embroidery foot, which means I have to take off this shank. Oops, I think I missed. I did. There we go. And tighten that. Okay, so that's installed. Now we want to put in the needle. So I have my embroidery needle that I showed you before. Just going to put it in my needle holder. And just putting this down so I can get it into the hole. And I'm making sure it's well up there where it's supposed to be as far as it can go. And again, just tighten it lightly. You don't want to over tighten it. If I get my screwdriver in there, it's a little awkward. Oops. Okay. There we go. Needles in place. Let's put in the bobbin. Okay, so bobbin, thread comes off like a P, comes off to the left side. Drop it in, pull it down underneath the hook. There's a little hook right there. Up there, and away we go. And I have checked, double checked, triple checked in the manual for threading this, but I'm not an amateur to this. I've had this machine for almost 2 years. I've been threading it the correct way since then as well, but I just double checked to make sure. And now I need some thread, some embroidery thread. So I'm just going to grab something here. Bright yellow will do. And I'm going to thread it, and I've already got the lock on. So in it goes there, it goes around here, goes up. I make sure that it's in the lever, under here, through there, and into the threading mechanism. Now, one thing I should have done, and I didn't, so I'm unthreading it, is I should first of all put my needle down. It wants me to put the needle, the carriage in the stored position for this. So I should have done that first, I guess. So let me just do this, I'll be back. Okay, so I've got the arm of the embroidery unit stored so I can thread this properly, because it says in the book, make sure you go needle down, needle up, so that the lever up here is in the right position. Hit the lock key, thread it following the path diagram on the machine, making sure that's in the uptake lever. It's in all of these. It's in the automatic threader. Push the button for automatic threading. There it is. And I'm thread it and release the lock. Now, I like to open up the side panel right here to make sure my thread is on this little lever. And I don't know if you can see it in this shot, but there's a little lever right here. Let me move the camera in a little bit closer. So I'm trying to position this, sorry, this is awkward. So right in here, there's the lever, the thread is in that hole, and it comes down and out there. So yes, I am threaded properly. So I'm going to switch it over to embroidery mode, and we'll come back and see what happens. Okay, so my thread is threaded. I've got a new needle in there. It's an embroidery needle. I'm using the yellow dot bobbin case in my machine. It's all set up to embroider, and I've picked a very simple basic one color pattern of a butterfly that I have used this one many times, and I have a double layer of stabilizer. Actually, I don't need a double layer stabilizer for this particular pattern because it's only 1646 stitches, and so you use one layer, or the guide is to use one layer of stabilizer for every 8,000 stitches. So actually I'm just going to remove that second layer. I was floating it. I have stabilizer in the hoop with my fabric all nice and taut in here, and it's set up and it's ready to go. Now I'm a little bit afraid because I'm not sure what's going to happen at this stage, but if it's been before, it's not going to pull up the bobbin thread or whatever. Maybe this will turn me into a liar. Now that I'm documenting it, let's see. So I'm ready to go, let's go. And I've got the speed set at about 600 SPM, stitches per minute. I'm going to drop it. I'm going to drop it to the lowest, to 400. I don't know, I'm just doing it. Yep, just broke the thread right off the bat. And that's what it was doing before. And you see, and it never even pulled up the bobbin thread at all on here. So let's double check the bobbin. And take off the hoop. I'm going to pull the bobbin out, and I'm going to rethread the bobbin. Now this is a Wonderfill Class 15 pre-wound bobbin. I use them all the time for both piecing and for embroidery work, and there's no problem. So I put that under the hook, and I'm just very carefully making sure that it is threaded properly, and it is. I'm going to check in here. Yeah, you see this, the thread came off. What can I say? The thread has come off the lift lever, or whatever they call this, because it wasn't catching the bobbin thread. So I have to rethread it. So I'm going to rethread it, set the lock, and this is where I think the main problem is happening, that this keeps dropping out of here because it's not picking up the bobbin thread. And I have no idea why. Okay, it's rethreaded. Let's put the hoop back on. The hoop is on, it's secured. Let's go back to 0 position. Let's try again. Nope, hear that noise? As soon as I hear that noise, I know there's a problem. Yep, it's not pulling up the, well, it did pull up the bobbin thread this time, but that noise I should not be hearing. That noise means that the bobbin case is being pulled. So I'm just going to cut my thread and see, and this is where all the problems stem from. And if I try to release this, oh, it did come out this time. And I'm looking here at my bobbin. Let's move this hoop out of the way. And for some reason, it is not pulling up that bobbin thread. Now I'm going to pop the plate. This is seated where it's supposed to be seated, but for some reason it's not pulling it up. And again, here we go. It started to bounce out of there, and that's why it started to do that noise that I stopped it at, because it's no longer sitting in here in the lever. So that's no good. It has to sit in there. If it doesn't sit in there, it can't, it's not the right tension. So why is it doing that? Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try an experiment. I'm going to take the yellow bobbin case out of this. Now remember, this yellow bobbin case had been scarred before by the problems that I had, and I filed those rough edges down as best I could, so there's no burrs on it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace it with a red dot bobbin case. Now, the red dot bobbin case is usually used for regular sewing. The yellow one is usually used for embroidery. So we'll see what happens when I replace it with the red dot. Okay, so I've replaced the yellow dot bobbin with the red dot bobbin. I have rethreaded the machine from scratch, rethreaded the bobbin path as well, and I have it all set up with the hoop, and I'm using the same pattern. The only thing that I have changed different this time is that I put in the red dot bobbin. So let's see what happens. Nope, you heard the noise? Okay, let's cut the thread. Shouldn't hear that noise. That's the beginning that it was pulling things up incorrectly. Yeah, it's all knotted underneath here too, under the hoop as well. In fact, it just pulled right out very easily. It's not locking the stitches. And yeah, and it pulled it off of here. Yep, it's not on my release arm either. So my conclusion there is it has nothing to do with the bobbin. And that red dot bobbin that's in there does not have any scarring on it whatsoever. It was brand new one. So there is definitely a problem with the embroidery function on this. So what I'm going to do now is just show you how it works in regular sewing. So I'm going to switch it over for regular sewing, and I'll be back. And just by the way, when I flipped up my plate to set it up for regular sewing, I found strands of my yellow Floriani thread in here as well, which means it was cutting those off or doing something, I don't know what, which is not good. You don't want little pieces of thread stuck in there. So I've cleaned those all out. So I've set my machine up for just regular sewing right now. I have an F foot in here. I've got the zigzag needle plate in here. I rethreaded my bobbin, and I've rethreaded my Aurifil 50/2 thread that I use for piecing all the time. So I'm just taking a piece of scrap fabric here. I just have it doubled over, and I'm just going to do a straight stitch at a slower speed, just as I normally would. Now hear that? That's the way the machine is supposed to sound. It purrs like a kitten. Let's just cut the thread. So no problems there. Back of this, thread's there, it's picking up the bobbin thread, it's sewing, no problem whatsoever. So now let's try a decorative stitch. And let's just try something basic. How about some little leaves? Now I don't have any stabilizer in this, but this has been doubled over, and in fact this piece already has some stitching on it because this came back with my machine after it had been repaired, and this must have been the test piece that the repair person used. So I'm just going to stick this in, and away we go. Sounds perfectly normal. After a while, I'm used to the different sounds this machine makes, and this is the sound it should make when everything is running perfectly normal. And it seems to be not having any problem whatsoever doing this decorative stitch, so let's just finish it off. Just cutting a thread, and there we go. There's the decorative stitch, those leaves. No problem. So you see the problem all stems from the embroidery. And I have no idea why. I have followed everything, as I said, from the instruction book in terms of threading it, setting it up, the whole bit, all the settings. So why is it doing that when it embroiders? It sews beautifully, it embroiders like crap. So that's the problem I'm having right now. And I'll see what answer I get back from my Janome dealership, and we'll go from there. So stay tuned for a continuing video of what's going on with my embroidery machine. Thanks for watching.